to start my video, but there's a giant cat attacking me. Alright, see you, Kipper. Yeah, have a good one. What is going on, guys? Nesmokip here, back again for another video. The first video, in fact, in a while where I've appeared in front of the camera. And as you may have noticed, you know, there's been a big change in my appearance since then. Now, you probably guessed what it is, and you are correct. I do have new glasses. Anyway, yes, I'm back in front of the camera because today we are doing another Animemories. And today, the series we're going to be talking about is Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, if you grew up in England, or the UK, and I would assume the US, although I don't really know because I wasn't there, in the early 2000s, then you were probably into Yu-Gi-Oh! Unless you were a cool kid who played football or something, but then, you know, we don't care if you're kind around here. So yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the sort of mega franchise that came and just swept the whole nation, except Pokemon, which had done it better about 5 years earlier. But yeah, still, Yu-Gi-Oh! Came out and it was a really, really big thing, and there was two major components to it, and that was the card game and the TV show. Now, I've talked to a lot of people, and it seems to vary to person as if they got into the card game or the TV show first. For me, personally, it was the card game. I remember one day I was walking into an off-license with my mum, and behind the counter, this shiny thing just sort of glistened out to me, and I was like, what is that? And I sort of leaned in closer, and it said, Yu-Gi-Oh! The Lost Millennium, and had a picture of like ancient gear golem on it, and it was the hypest thing. I had to have it right then. So yeah, I got this booster pack of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, which you couldn't do anything with to actually play, yeah, because you needed a deck of 40. Of course, I didn't know that, I just bought because it looked cool. But anyway, luckily about a week later, I had a friend of mine, childminders, who also happened to be into Yu-Gi-Oh! And he actually knew how to play the game, so he taught me how to play the game, and I got really, really into the card game, and as I did, the rest of the nation seemed to as well. And yeah, it got really, really big pretty much everywhere I went, especially at school. If you were playing Yu-Gi-Oh! At school, you probably remember every lunchtime kids would run outside, slap down their decks, and just start playing. It'd be the greatest thing ever. Eventually, one kid would ruin the fun for everyone, get too salty about trading or battling or something, and then the school would ban the entire trading card thing entirely. But that didn't really matter because everyone kept doing it undercover, like trading cards like drugs underneath the climbing frame or something. It was good. It was a good time. Now for me, it got even bigger, and I started going to a local comic book shop, or Games Workshop type thing. You know, one of those Warhammer places that have all the weird people with neck beards. And then I found out that there was actual, like, fully grown people. I was like 8 years old at the time, who played Yu-Gi-Oh! And this was mind-boggling to me. And we went there and I played every Saturday with my friend, and it was really, really good. Until someone stole my deck. But enough about the card game. This is Animemories after all, so here we're going to talk about the anime, which was the other major component of Yu-Gi-Oh! When it came over here. So the anime, or as the cartoon, as we called it back then because we didn't know what anime was airing, at least in the UK, on Nicktoons, like I think every 6 PM or something on weekdays, and it was like the hypest thing I'd ever seen, because obviously it was very anime styled, and, you know, not being into anime much back then, that was still the coolest thing I'd ever seen. But nowadays when people look back at the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, people tend to agree that it really wasn't that good, especially the version that we watched as kids. And that's mostly because it was dubbed by 4Kids, and you all know what 4Kids do to anime. Never again. But, you know, it was still enjoyable at the time, and it's still somewhat enjoyable now just for its cheesiness. Now, I could end the story there, but the thing is, when I was getting back into anime later on, when I was getting into stuff like Dragon Ball Z and One Piece for, you know, for real, at this point I'd worked out that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was anime, so I decided to take a look back to it and see what I'd been missing out on. And this is when I found out about the masses of stuff that was cut from the Japanese version. You know, like the swearing and death and, well, not really swearing, but death, definitely, and that sort of stuff. And I remember not being able to believe it, like, what? It was a grown-up show for grown-ups like me, and yes, it turns out it was. Well, no, not really, it's still shonen. But the point is, I was more interested in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now because it seemed slightly more mature, even though it really isn't. So at this point, when I was, you know, early into my collecting phase, I thought, you know, I want to get some more manga as well, which is when I looked into the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. Now, this was one of the most interesting things that I found out when I got back into it, was the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh! Had a whole Season 0 thing. Almost like the Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z, because a lot of people were into Dragon Ball Z and didn't watch the original Dragon Ball. So when I found out about this right here, and there's a whole 7 volumes of stuff that we never found out that isn't even about the card game, I was very, very interested. And I picked it up and I read it, and I thought it was really, really good. I was like, damn, this is actually really fun. And then after that, I got into the Duelist Kingdom saga, which is where the anime that we all know and remember started. And even then, I was pretty impressed. I was like, this is different enough, and you know, there were enough changes made that when I read it here, it's almost like a whole new experience. And so I ended up collecting all of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga all the way through to Millennium World, which is the final arc when they go to Egypt and everything. And it was really interesting to just go back to a childhood show and experience it in a completely different way, and it's just sort of, like, is better in every way. And I just genuinely didn't think that, you know, the sort of dumb show that I watched back on TV back in the day could have stemmed from this, such an interesting and unique, like, manga. And another thing that was interesting as well was, as I'd gotten older, and before I'd gotten into anime manga, and as I'd looked back at Yu-Gi-Oh!, I'd assumed that the show had been made as a commercial for the card game, but it was actually more the other way around. The manga started and it was a manga about games in general, all kinds of tabletop games. And then, later on, they made a card game based off of the card game Duel Monsters in the manga, which then sort of eclipsed the popularity of the actual thing, and now every Yu-Gi-Oh! Series that comes out is about the card game entirely. Kind of strange and kind of a shame, I think, considering that the manga was actually really, really good. So yeah, overall going back to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga told me to really second guess things that I had watched as a kid. Because people have become so aware of their nostalgia now, sometimes when they look back at stuff they watched or read or experienced as a kid, they think that definitely wasn't as good as I thought it was due to nostalgia. And sometimes that is entirely true, but other times if you look a bit deeper into it, you can find something entirely new, like I did here. So overall I'm really thankful for Yu-Gi-Oh! Mostly because of the memories it gave me back in the day, but also because I'd rediscovered the manga and now it's actually one of my favourite manga ever. Tell me what happened in your Yu-Gi-Oh! Story down in the comments. Tell me about how people stole your deck as well, because, you know, we need therapy for that. That was genuinely one of the most traumatic experiences of my entire life. And hey, there's a new movie coming out soon as well, which I'm actually really excited for. It's kind of a Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods type of deal, except with Yu-Gi-Oh! In this being written by the original writer Kazuki Takahashi. So I'm actually pretty excited for that. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, that's pretty much what I have to say on Yu-Gi-Oh! Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. Bye.